Black suits, dark sunglasses, a silver flash that could erase your memory in seconds. Back in 1997, Men in Black made the world feel strange, funny, and oddly comforting at the same time. But behind the smooth one-liners and alien creatures, the movie was hiding something much messier: last-minute rewrites, painful prosthetics, exhausted actors, creative battles, and scenes that almost never made it into the film at all. Some of the most iconic moments in Men in Black were created under pressure, and some nearly collapsed completely behind the camera. If you enjoy uncovering the hidden stories behind classic movies, make sure to like and subscribe. And now, it's time to step into the shadows and uncover the 15 shocking behind-the-scenes truths hidden inside Men in Black. 1. The movie originally had a much darker ending. By the time audiences reached the final act of Men in Black, the movie had become a slick summer blockbuster full of jokes, flashy gadgets, and cool chemistry between agents J and K. But early versions of the film were far stranger than most people realize. The original source material, the Men in Black comic book, was darker, meaner, and far more unsettling. The agents weren't lovable protectors. They were cold, intimidating figures dealing with terrifying alien threats in brutal ways. Early drafts of the screenplay reportedly carried some of that same energy. The ending leaned harder into horror comedy territory, with a much uglier tone surrounding the alien invasion and Edgar's transformation. Studio executives became nervous. Test screenings suggested audiences loved the humor and chemistry between Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, far more than the darker material. So the finale was softened, simplified, and reshaped into something more crowd-friendly. Ironically, that lighter ending helped turn the movie into a global hit. But traces of the original darker vision still remain hidden throughout the film, especially inside Edgar's disturbing transformation. And that transformation almost looked completely different, too. 2. Will Smith wasn't the first choice for Agent J. It's almost impossible to imagine anyone other than Will Smith wearing the black suit now. His charisma practically became the identity of the franchise. But during early casting discussions, the studio looked at several completely different actors before Smith was officially chosen. At the time, Smith had just exploded after Independence Day turned him into one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. But that success also made some executives nervous. They worried audiences would see Men in Black as just another copy of Independence Day with aliens and jokes. Other names reportedly floated around included actors with much darker or more serious screen personas. Some versions of the film could have leaned heavily into dry sci-fi instead of playful comedy. But once producers saw the contrast between Smith's fast-talking energy and Tommy Lee Jones' exhausted deadpan style, everything changed. That chemistry became the heart of the movie almost instantly. Even behind the scenes, crew members noticed how naturally the two actors balanced each other. Smith brought movement and humor. Jones brought calm precision. Together, they made the bizarre world feel believable. But while Smith looked relaxed on screen, another actor was quietly becoming miserable inside layers of alien makeup. 3. Tommy Lee Jones secretly hated the makeup process. Agent K always looked perfectly composed. Calm voice. Straight face. Never panicked. But behind the camera, Tommy Lee Jones was reportedly growing increasingly frustrated with one exhausting part of production: the endless makeup sessions. Because Men in Black relied heavily on practical creature effects instead of full CGI, many scenes required actors to spend hours surrounded by prosthetics, slime effects, animatronics, and mechanical alien suits. Jones especially disliked the slow process of filming around complicated creature setups. Some mornings reportedly began before sunrise, just to prepare scenes involving alien interactions. Hot studio lights made the makeup rooms even worse. Crew members later described the set as physically draining during long effects-heavy shooting days. Jones already had a reputation in Hollywood for being intensely serious and private, which created a strange contrast next to Will Smith's playful energy on set. But oddly enough, that real-life difference ended up helping the movie. The slightly irritated, emotionally detached attitude Jones carried during production blended perfectly into Agent K's personality. In a strange way, the stress made the character feel more authentic. And no creature on set caused more chaos than the gigantic cockroach alien that terrified audiences in the final act. 4. The cockroach alien was a practical effects nightmare. Long before modern CGI took over Hollywood, Men in Black relied heavily on practical creature effects. And nothing pushed the crew harder than the gigantic cockroach version of Edgar in the final act. The creature looked incredible on screen: slimy skin, twitching legs, dripping saliva, massive moving jaws, but operating it behind the scenes was reportedly exhausting. The animatronic bug required multiple puppeteers working together at the same time just to create basic movement. Some crew members controlled facial mechanics. Others handled body motion. Others operated slime and fluid effects separately. Under the hot lights, the giant suit became unbearable. Mechanical failures constantly interrupted filming. Sticky alien fluids covered parts of the set for hours. And because the creature was so large, certain camera angles had to be redesigned completely at the last minute. What audiences saw for only a few minutes on screen reportedly took weeks of difficult setup and repairs. But director Barry Sonnenfeld refused to abandon the practical effects approach because he believed the creature needed to feel physically real beside the actors. That decision gave the movie its strange, tactile look, something many modern CGI-heavy blockbusters still struggle to recreate. And somehow, one tiny silver prop almost disappeared from the movie entirely. 5. The famous neuralyzer scene almost didn't exist. The neuralyzer became one of the most iconic sci-fi gadgets of the entire 1990s. One flash of light, and your memory vanished forever. Even people who never watched the movie recognized it instantly. But early on, the studio reportedly wasn't convinced audiences would understand the joke. Executives worried the concept was too weird, too abrupt, and too silly for mainstream viewers. Some feared casual audiences would become confused by a device that could instantly erase memories without explanation. There were even discussions about simplifying the idea or reducing how often it appeared in the story. But the filmmakers pushed back hard. They understood the neuralyzer wasn't just a gadget, it represented the entire hidden world of Men in Black. It turned ordinary people into accidental witnesses, living beside aliens without ever knowing it happened. Ironically, the simplicity became the genius of it. A tiny flash. A calm explanation. Then, life continues normally. The scenes became funny, eerie, and strangely unsettling all at once. Years later, the neuralyzer would become one of the defining images of late 90s pop culture. But while audiences loved the smooth finished product, the actual filming process behind the movie was becoming increasingly chaotic. 6. The movie was being rewritten while filming. One of the biggest hidden secrets behind Men in Black was how unstable the script became during production. Even while cameras were rolling, major scenes were reportedly still being rewritten. Actors sometimes arrived on set unsure which version of a scene they would actually perform. Dialogue changed overnight. Entire comedic beats were adjusted depending on what worked best between Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. In some cases, scenes were shortened or reshaped only hours before filming began. Part of the problem came from the movie's unusual tone. The filmmakers were constantly trying to balance comedy, science fiction, action, horror, and deadpan humor all at the same time. Push too dark, and the movie became uncomfortable. Push too goofy, and the tension disappeared completely. Director Barry Sonnenfeld later became known for thriving in controlled chaos, but during production, the constant changes reportedly created real stress behind the scenes. Crew members were racing to keep up with revised effect shots, updated props, and rewritten sequences almost daily. Strangely, that instability may have helped the movie feel more alive. The dialogue between the leads stayed loose, natural, and unpredictable. But nobody transformed themselves more painfully for the movie than the actor hiding inside Edgar's collapsing human skin. 7. Vincent D'Onofrio injured himself creating Edgar's walk. The moment Edgar first shuffles across the screen in his stolen farmer's body, something already feels wrong. His head tilts strangely. His limbs move like they barely belong to him. Even his voice sounds like it's being forced through damaged skin. It became one of the creepiest performances in 90s sci-fi, and it physically hurt the actor performing it. Vincent D'Onofrio completely transformed himself for the role. To create Edgar's unnatural movement, he reportedly twisted his body into uncomfortable positions for long periods during filming. The stiff posture and distorted walk placed serious strain on his knees, back, and neck. Some reports even claim he used braces during parts of production, because the movement became so painful over time. What made the performance even stranger was how committed D'Onofrio remained between takes. Crew members described him staying partially in character, moving awkwardly around the set while covered in sweat, makeup glue, and layers of decaying prosthetics. The result became unforgettable. Edgar didn't feel like a normal movie villain. He felt like a living creature wearing a human body incorrectly. Even decades later, audiences still remember that disturbing walk. And while D'Onofrio terrified audiences on screen, another Hollywood legend was quietly helping save the movie behind the scenes. 8. Steven Spielberg quietly helped shape the film. Most people remember Barry Sonnenfeld as the creative force behind Men in Black. But looming behind the production was another massive Hollywood figure, Steven Spielberg. Spielberg served as executive producer, but according to people involved with the film, his influence reached far beyond a simple credit. During difficult moments in production, especially when the tone became unstable, Spielberg reportedly stepped in with guidance about pacing, humor, and audience balance. At the time, Hollywood was entering a major CGI boom after films like Jurassic Park changed visual effects forever. But Spielberg understood something many studios were forgetting. Audiences connected emotionally to characters first, spectacle second. That philosophy heavily shaped Men in Black. Instead of turning the movie into non-stop alien action, the story focused on the growing relationship between Agent J and Agent K. The weird creatures became background texture, supporting the human chemistry. Several people connected to the production later suggested Spielberg helped keep the movie from collapsing into tonal confusion. Without that balance, Men in Black could have easily become either too strange or too generic. But even with Spielberg involved, one particular scene left early test audiences deeply uncomfortable. 9. The morgue scene made test audiences uncomfortable. One of the strangest moments in Men in Black happens inside the morgue. A calm conversation suddenly turns horrifying when a tiny alien creature unfolds itself from inside a dead human head. Audiences laughed in theaters eventually. But during early screenings, reactions were reportedly much more divided. Some viewers found the sequence genuinely disturbing rather than funny. The mixture of medical imagery, body horror, and sudden creature effects caught people completely off guard. The filmmakers intentionally pushed the scene into uncomfortable territory. The fluorescent lighting, cold silence, and eerie pacing make the reveal feel almost like a horror movie for a few seconds. Then the movie abruptly swings back into comedy again. That tonal whiplash became part of Men in Black's identity. What's fascinating is how risky the scene actually was for a major summer blockbuster in 1997. Family audiences weren't expecting grotesque alien parasites hiding inside corpses. But instead of removing the scene completely, the studio reportedly adjusted the editing and comedic timing just enough to soften the shock. The final version became iconic, partly because it feels so unexpected. And speaking of unexpected, one supporting actor nearly stole the entire movie by ignoring how his character was originally written. 10. Rip Torn's performance was almost completely different. The moment Zed walks into a scene, the energy changes instantly. He doesn't act like the head of a secret organization protecting Earth. He acts tired, irritated, and slightly insane, which made him unforgettable. But that version of the character reportedly wasn't what the screenplay originally intended. Rip Torn brought a chaotic unpredictability to the role that slowly reshaped the character during production. Instead of playing Zed as a polished government leader, Torn leaned into rough humor, strange pauses, and bizarre delivery choices that made him feel like a man who had seen too many impossible things for too many years. Crew members reportedly never knew exactly how Torn would deliver certain lines. Sometimes he would change rhythm mid-scene. Sometimes he would throw in odd reactions that weren't scripted at all. But strangely, it worked perfectly inside the strange universe of Men in Black. His performance helped make the agency feel older and more mysterious, like this hidden organization had existed long before Agent J ever arrived. Beneath the comedy, there was a strange exhaustion hanging over the character. That subtle feeling gave the movie an unexpected emotional texture. But behind the scenes, the production itself was becoming dangerously close to missing its deadline completely. 11. The film nearly lost its summer release date. By the final months of production, pressure inside the studio reportedly became intense. Men in Black wasn't just another movie anymore. It had become one of the biggest summer releases of 1997, and the schedule was starting to collapse. Visual effects shots still weren't finished. Certain creature sequences required additional work. Editors were racing against time, while sound design teams continued building alien voices and effects almost until release. Because the movie blended practical creatures with emerging CGI technology, post-production became far more complicated than originally expected. At one point, insiders reportedly worried the film might not be ready in time for its massive summer rollout. Delays would have been financially disastrous. Marketing campaigns were already running. Toys, posters, and promotional partnerships had already launched. The pressure became enormous. What makes this story fascinating is how calm the finished movie feels. Watching it today, audiences would never guess how chaotic the final editing process actually was. The pacing feels smooth. The humor feels effortless. But underneath that polished surface, crews were reportedly working around the clock, trying to finish the film before the deadline hit. And while everyone was exhausted behind the scenes, one disgusting little scene became legendary for an entirely different reason. 12. The cockroach sugar water scene was more revolting than it looked.
Need to ease up out my face for something bad.
More. That single word instantly brings back one of the weirdest moments in the entire movie. Edgar, barely holding his human disguise together anymore, stands in a filthy kitchen, gulping down gallons of sugar water, like some dying insect creature trying to survive. The scene became iconic partly because it feels so physically unpleasant. But filming it was reportedly just as disgusting as it looked. Vincent D'Onofrio had to repeatedly drink thick mixtures during multiple takes, while performing under heavy prosthetic makeup and hot lighting. Between takes, sticky liquid reportedly covered parts of the set, while makeup teams constantly repaired Edgar's deteriorating skin effects. The genius of the scene is how uncomfortable it becomes without showing anything truly graphic. Edgar's dry skin, distorted voice, and desperate obsession with sugar make him feel less human every second. Audiences slowly realize the farmer is already disappearing underneath the alien wearing his body. That growing body horror gave Men in Black a darker edge that many people forget today because of the comedy. And while the movie turned Will Smith into an even bigger superstar, the non-stop production schedule behind it was quietly draining him. 13. Will Smith was exhausted from back-to-back blockbusters. By the time Will Smith stepped onto the Men in Black set, Hollywood was already treating him like the future of blockbuster movies. Independence Day had exploded worldwide only a year earlier, and suddenly, Smith was everywhere. But behind the massive success, the schedule was becoming brutal. Instead of slowing down after Independence Day, Smith jumped directly into another effects-heavy sci-fi production, almost immediately. Long shooting days, stunt work, constant press attention, and the pressure of carrying another major summer film reportedly left him physically exhausted during parts of production. What audiences never noticed was how much energy Smith constantly had to maintain on screen. Agent J talks fast, moves fast, jokes constantly, and reacts to every bizarre alien encounter with explosive personality. That energy became one of the movie's biggest strengths, but sustaining it for months of filming reportedly became draining. At the same time, Smith was also recording music connected to the movie's marketing campaign, creating an even more overwhelming workload. The soundtrack song eventually became a huge hit itself, permanently attaching his image to the franchise. Ironically, the exhaustion may have helped certain scenes feel more believable. Underneath Jay's jokes, there's a visible sense of someone overwhelmed by a world moving too fast around him. And behind all of it, the director was quietly fighting to stop the movie from becoming something much safer and more generic. 14. Barry Sonnenfeld was constantly fighting the studio tone. One of the biggest reasons Men in Black still feels unique today is because it never behaves like a normal family blockbuster. The movie is funny, but also strangely cold. Weird things happen constantly, yet nobody reacts emotionally. That unsettling deadpan style came largely from director Barry Sonnenfeld. Sonnenfeld reportedly wanted the film to feel darker, stranger, and more emotionally detached than the studio initially expected. He leaned into awkward silence, bizarre alien behavior, and dry humor that sometimes bordered on uncomfortable. The famous scene with the tiny alien controlling a human body in the morgue is a perfect example of that balance. Studio executives, however, reportedly worried audiences wanted broader comedy and safer emotional beats. During production and editing, there were constant concerns about whether the movie was becoming too weird for mainstream audiences. What makes the final film fascinating is that both sides are visible at the same time. Beneath the polished summer blockbuster surface, there's still something oddly eerie about the world. The agents erase memories casually. Aliens live secretly among humans. Entire disasters are hidden instantly from the public. Nobody ever fully understands what's happening. That strange emotional distance became part of the movie's identity. And looking back now, Men in Black accidentally captured the final years of a very specific Hollywood era before everything changed. 15. The movie accidentally captured the end of 90s optimism. Watching Men in Black today feels strangely different than it did in 1997. At the time, audiences saw it as a cool, funny sci-fi adventure. But decades later, the movie almost feels like a time capsule from the final years of late 90s Hollywood optimism. The world inside Men in Black is chaotic, but still playful. The government hides aliens, but the heroes remain calm and competent. New York feels crowded yet strangely safe. Even the weirdest creatures are treated with casual humor instead of fear. There's a smooth confidence running through the entire movie that became far rarer after the early 2000s changed blockbuster filmmaking forever. What nobody realized during production was that Men in Black would become one of the last giant pre-millennial fantasy hits before Hollywood slowly shifted toward darker franchises, heavier action, and more emotionally intense storytelling. That's partly why the movie still feels nostalgic today in a way that's hard to explain. Behind all the hidden production chaos, painful makeup sessions, rewrites, and studio battles, the film accidentally preserved a very specific feeling in time, a world where even secret alien conspiracies could still feel fun. And maybe that's why the flash of a neuralyzer still feels oddly emotional now, like a memory from another version of Hollywood that quietly disappeared. The suits were fake. The aliens were rubber and wires. The sets were filled with exhaustion, rewrites, sweat, and chaos hiding just outside the camera frame. But somehow, out of all that pressure, Men in Black created something audiences never forgot. Maybe that's the strange magic of movies like this. The finished film feels smooth and effortless, while the real story behind it was messy, unpredictable, and sometimes barely holding together at all. Decades later, people still remember the sunglasses, the neuralyzer flash, and the feeling of walking into a theater and discovering a hidden world living secretly beside our own. But now, those memories carry something else, too. The knowledge that behind every joke and every alien disguise, real people were struggling to make the impossible